XU1 really suited to that circuit. Warwick Farm I really like. It was a great circuit, good driver circuit, and you know, those, how can I say it, those races were always good races. And you know, with Chibo, even Moffat in those days, and Pete and them, and maybe in, you know, Falcons. The Falcons seemed to struggle around there with their tyres, but no, it was a good race.
Right.
You know, after about 10 laps, you could actually slide back 3 or 4 seconds a lap, just because the tyres now didn't have any grip left in them. You know, so you were just struggling to get around all the corners. So yes, the cars were going to slide, but everyone was in the same boat. You know, so it wasn't just us. So everybody, because the tyres in those days were still cross-ply tyres. Ragers really hadn't come in, and again, the technology in tyre development over the years has probably been the most. How can I say it? As far as performance is concerned, that's where the performance basically is in a lot of cars. We're going back to our day, obviously. It was different, you know, and the cars were different. You know, you had the Falcons, which had fairly narrow wheels and tyres with a lot of horsepower, and the XU1s were about the same size, tyre size, but much lighter. So on the twistier circuits we were good.
The Holden dealer team, represented on the front row of the grid by Peter Brock and Colin Bond in the Torana XU1s, the fastest qualifiers and should provide the main interest in this race. On the second line, Dick Johnson of Queensland, also in a Torana XU1 in car number 7, sharing the second line with John Goss in the Ford GT. Third line, Don Holland, yet another Torana with Bob Morris. And on the fourth line, Tony Allen in the Chrysler Charger, sharing that line on the grid with the Victorian driver Murray Carter in a Falcon GTHO. So plenty of power in this race, plenty of driving skill. Peter Brock and Colin Bond. Brock the fastest qualifier, 1 minute 51.7, 2.5 seconds faster than Colin Bond, a very fast time indeed. Just a little bit better at the start, and Brock left behind slightly, but he's making up ground to be in third place.
Tucked in the middle there between them was John Goss with his fastback Falcon, and Goss in a fair amount of trouble, I think, as Peter Brock endeavoured to help him to be a little more sideways than he originally was as they went into paddock for the first time. And Goss trying to be in all the wrong places for Peter Brock as they whistle down and straight under the Dunlop Bridge and into the braking area of Creek, with Bond in the number 2 Holden dealer team car. Perhaps out to avenge his unlucky fan belt breakage at Surfers Paradise last weekend, which handed the race on a plate to his teammate Peter Brock. A lot of traffic down there at Creek, and the road obviously well and truly awash. Bond, after a very canny start, flinging the car up through the S's, and Goss has managed to still keep Peter Brock behind him as they go up through the S's. There are a fair number of Toranas tucked in the middle of there was Tony Allen's Charger. Now seeing some of the tail enders, Fred Gibson going through, and back with our leader Colin Bond whistling around the top of the lake. The road very heavily wet.
This race over 20 laps of the Warwick Farm circuit, which is 2.25 miles in distance, so that's a total distance for the race of 45 miles or 72 kilometres.
Pressure at this stage still fairly vigorous. The entire field fairly closely bunched up, and obviously Goss there going to be the centre of attention for a while, I'd say, in that rather bulky Falcon, as Peter Brock tries to work out how he can get past.
Into pit straight for the first time, 19 laps to go. Colin Bond really making the others stretch to stay in touch with him. He's opened up quite a substantial lead after only 1 lap, and look at that gap between Bond and Peter Brock, who's now gone past John Goss in the Falcon GT to take over second place. So we have Torana's first and second, Goss in the GT, Ford is third, and the Toranas again filling the placings after that.
Well, Brock with Goss behind him, I don't think he's going to let up for a while. I have a feeling that in the light of his practice time, his car is still faster than Colin Bond's, and I don't think he'll settle for second for very much longer. Goss still in the picture, literally speaking, down the creek. See what a large car it is. You can see also that despite the relatively unsophisticated suspension of these cars, and very wet conditions, that in fact they're getting around the corners quite quickly.
That's Brock still in second place, car number 18, but the leader is Colin Bond in 14, some 100 yards in front of Peter Brock, who we see now, and John Goss in the Ford GT. Fastest qualifying time for this in very similar conditions. Yesterday were Peter Brock 1:51.7, but he's now content with second place for the time being at any rate. Colin Bond 1:53.4, Dick Johnson of Queensland 1:56.1, and John Goss 6.2. So very little between first and second, and very little between third and fourth in the qualifying times.
You can see there on John Goss's back mudguard the imprint, or rather Torana-sized mark, you might describe it as, which he acquired from Peter Brock during a very crowded start, just at paddock corner, 100 yards or so after the start line. Goss chucking the big car around. It's in distinctive John Goss colours, pale blue with yellow ornamentation.
Interesting, Graham, we have Torana's first and second through Brock and Bond, Goss in the Falcon GT as third, and then we have Torana's fourth, fifth and sixth at this stage.
Now we've got some more action. There's young Bob Morris with Tony Allen behind him in his silver Charger, and I'd say next would be Yes, Don Holland, and they're working quite hard as they come up through the S's there. Not very much between them, and a lot of correcting lock from these relatively unmanageable cars as they're chucked up through this never-ending series of corners up from Creek, heading up towards the racecourse end of the road racing circuit.
Bob Morris in the Torana XU1 lying in fourth place, and pursued by Don Holland, at least by Tony Allen in the Charger. Allen has moved up 2 positions in the last lap. He was initially lying in sixth place, but now he's moved up to fourth place, having overtaken car number 8, which is the Torana of Don Holland, and car number 11, which is the Torana of Bob Morris. Bob Holden driving the Escort GT just in front of car number 7, the Queensland entry driven by Dick Johnson.
Dick Johnson, the Queensland Charger, virtually king of touring cars in Queensland with his bright yellow Torana. And there's now a veteran, Bob Holden. He's been around so long that it's hard to think he's a veteran. He's almost an institution. Bond, by going straight to the lead, has got all the track in front of him at his disposal. He's making full use of it too in these conditions. It's not a type of day in which you restrict yourself to a definite line, and you really need as much room as you can take, and that's the way that Bond's been going through the field, lapping one of the cars at the rear of the field. And you can see the rain and mist here at Warwick Farm. A very wet day with the rain not ceasing at all. Very quick negotiation, a very tight corner, normally taken at somewhere, I'd say, between 45 and 50 miles an hour. Bond there not very much slower than that in pouring rain. Moreover, this is the sort of pace that Colin Bond could keep up for 500 miles or probably 1,000. He's very gifted, very determined driver.
So the order of cars in the sixth lap is Colin Bond in the Torana first, Peter Brock a Torana lying second, John Goss in the Ford GT and car number 2 is third, followed by car number 11, another Torana driven by Bob Morris, and then Tony Allen in the Chrysler Charger is lying in fifth place. So we have Toranas lying first, third and fourth, with a Ford GT in third place and a Chrysler Charger in fifth. Murray Carter in the Falcon GTHO, and you can see the condition of the surface off the track there. It's very difficult even for the driver to negotiate with such wide wheels to get back onto the track. But now he's on, and we'll see him accelerate now. This is Murray Carter in the Falcon GTHO. But he's dropped well back in the field through that incident, having gone off the track.
Well, that's Murray Carter, a man who leads a life never devoid of incident. And that's Carter again. Done it again. He enjoys active motor racing, and he's been racing, in fact, for quite a while. You'll see here the enormous care required to return to the circuit, no matter where you might have been before. He's come unglued there on that very slippery section where Gary Campbell had his accident in his Lola 330. Lots of puddles there and very slippery. I would feel now that Murray Carter is going to be rather cautious for a lap or two until he works out which way the river is actually flowing.
And it doesn't appear as though as much rain is falling now as was the case a few minutes ago, but it certainly had its effect by leaving a lot of water on the track. And you can see the spray being thrown up now, and there are a few of those puddles. But this track is not in a good condition through the conditions, and here's an upset for one of the Holden team drivers. Peter Brock is into the fence, and I doubt that he'll be continuing for a while, and it looks as though he'll have to stay there, because even if there's no superficial damage or mechanical damage to the car, it's going to be very difficult to get the car back onto the track from that position. In fact, I'd say almost impossible.
I'd never underestimate the power of a Brock, frankly, and the car, I believe, could be retrieved. On the other hand, what we've seen demonstrated there is one of the unique hazards of Warwick Farm, which is its dependence on and its interrelation with the horse racing course. Those tubular steel fences are not very pleasant things, fully capable of being turned into spears if you hit them in the right direction. And Brocky was really rather lucky that he was driving a closed motor car and appeared to have hit that fence broadside rather than head on.
So while we're watching Murray Carter, a change in positions with Brock off the track, Colin Bond still the leader, and it's John Goss in the Ford GT who's moved into second place.
It's becoming a fairly eventful race, not least due to the weather. Murray Carter has entertained us on several occasions already at this stage in the race. He's been off the road twice. And here's the man who's not made one mistake to date, Colin Bond, looking very composed, the Torana looking magnificent in full flight, launching itself out into pit straight now, race virtually at half distance.
And at half distance it is. The leader still Colin Bond. In second place, John Goss. In third place, Bob Morris. Fourth place, Don Holland. And back on the track, Peter Brock of Victoria. So he obviously was able to get out of that very slippery turf, and we'll just wonder how many positions he can pick up from now, although it is indicating he could be making...
Yes, there's a typical Fiat action. The various Fiats that are racing in this race are no respecter of persons, and there was a little 128 Fiat Coupe going round the outside of such an exalted personage as a Holden dealer team driver, not to be gainsaid. Now what's happening here, and you can see that the Holden dealer team boys are not completely prepared for it. I feel he's at least getting the car inspected. He may possibly be... Yes, well, there's the simple explanation. A little bit of panel work, a few suitably applied levers, and a little bit of pressure, I would feel, and we may have the mudguard removed from the tyre and Brock return to the race.
Well, Brock wants to waste as little time as possible, and just wait for these other cars to go down the track safely, and no doubt we'll see him scoot out of the pits and get back into the race as quickly as possible.
Well, in a 20-lap race, an incident at the 10th lap like that is not really going to do your chances much good. What we might possibly see here from Peter Brock, although he's not really that type, is now going to be a demonstration of Tiger, where he'll just turn it on, regardless of the fact that he's the best part of a lap behind. And he'll now just start to perform for the sheer hell of working his way back up as best he can.
Brock still trying desperately to catch up the leeway that he lost halfway through by leaving the track. But still Colin Bond in the second Torana XU1 of the Holden dealer team is leading the race. John Goss still in second place. Bob Morris in another Torana XU1 in third place.
Well, fair amount of traffic in there for Peter Brock. He's got Fred Gibson and Alan Grice ahead of him there in the S's, and I think he's starting to get a little excited about the fact that they weren't moving over. And that was Alan Grice, in fact, that's come unglued shortly after that, and gets his white Torana back on the road again with a minimum delay, in fact.
Well, in 10 laps of this race, we've seen more cars leave the actual racing surface than in any other race today, and I think we can attribute that back to probably to the fact that we've had so much rain in those 3 or 4 minutes after the race began. Colin Bond overtaking another car in the Escort driven by Lyndon Arnell of Queensland. 29 seconds is the lead that Bond has established over Goss.
Bond looking very much in command at this stage. The Torana's now quite well-sorted racing sedan car. Bond in that characteristic fashion, head slightly back, relaxed arm movements. A natural driver with a great deal of subsequent polish. And now very much in command of this race, as he's been in command of many others since he joined the Holden dealer team.
So with only the second half of the race in front of him, it remains to be seen whether Bond can stay on the track. If he does, I think it's not a certainty, but quite a distinct probability that he'll win this race easily, because he has such a substantial lead at this moment over John Goss in the Ford GT, who's holding down second place, but doing so in a great deal of difficulty. A bigger car, and in these conditions he's having to work a lot harder to keep it on the track, let alone try and catch up the leeway with which he trails Bond.
You'll see here the rather sort of toothless appearance of the big Ford. It's running conventional sized wheels, very low profile tyres which are about half the conventional thickness, designed to give higher road holding under racing conditions. This explains why it appears to have rather curious caster-like wheels. Stepping out now around one of the Escorts down the straight, speed differential here of somewhere between 20 and 30 miles an hour. And Goss Motors effortlessly passed
Barry Bassingthwaite
was
Escort.
Barry Bassingthwaite with his orange and black Escort. Still in second place and still working fairly hard, wasting no time lapping slower cars, and still with that motorboat-like power slide exit from the S's as he heads up towards the crossing. Watch also, the Ford seems to swallow the bumps on the crossing considerably better than the Toranas, which are obviously much harder sprung. Here it is, a big motor car indeed. Not really the sort of thing that you'd expect to be hurling around a fairly tight race circuit like Warwick Farm.
See a slight dent in the offside rear fender.
Strong swell of 6 litres of V8. Goss a little short on handling, and certainly embarrassed by the wet conditions, which don't really suit a car of this style, but getting as much power as he possibly can onto the wet road. Gradually falling back though on Bond, who's leading the race, but keeping his lead over third place man Bob Morris with the bright red Torana. And it looks as though Morris is about to be lapped, or is it sort of unlapped as it were, by Peter Brock. Back in the race again, and pulling strongly away now at this stage from Bob Morris.
And in fact, Peter Brock has moved up into 5th position, Graham. So the order with the Toranas really going well. Colin Bond leading from John Goss. In 3rd place is the Torana of Bob Morris, followed by another Torana of Don Holland. And Peter Brock has moved into 5th place. So 4 Toranas in the first 5.
Bond with no one in sight, fore or aft, stepping out from creek, up through the S's and under Shell Bridge. Still on this quite exuberant line with the tail hung well out, car fully under control. And it seems now that the road perhaps drying a little. You can start to see wheel tracks up there. And likewise, I think Bond not pressing as hard as he was in the early stages of the race.
At one stage had a lead of 29 seconds. He would have increased that slightly, but does appear to have eased off just slightly with some 5, perhaps 5.5 laps to go. But as Colin Bond comes down towards the finish line to complete his 13th lap, the 2nd place getter is John Goss in the Ford GT, and he's only coming across the causeway now, so that's at least half the circuit by which he trails the leader.
A while yet before we see Ford's return as a competitive force in touring car racing of this type in Australia. But there's obvious potential, I think, in the fastback Falcon. It's not the graceful car which I felt the Ford or Falcon GT was, but it's certainly an exciting shape. Makes a very good noise.
Colin Bond leads John Goss by 41 seconds, and there are 33 seconds between John Goss in 2nd place and the 3rd place car Bob Morris in the Torana XU1. So the field well strung out. 41 seconds between 1st and 3rd, between 1st and 2nd, 33 seconds between 2nd and 3rd, which is well over a minute separating the first 3 place getters, with only about 5 laps to go. Bob Holden off the track to the left, one of the earlier casualties over on the right.
It's been a race full of incident. Murray Carter, now in centre screen, has starred in several of them. John Goss has managed to curb his tremendous natural exuberance and keep everything more or less organised and more or less pointed in the direction he wants to go. But it's been a fine drive from John nonetheless.
Now 2 of the big cars in the race coming together with Goss, hot on the tail of the Falcon GTHO of Murray Carter. But Carter, after having been, all that splash from the large pool of water on the track, Carter, having been off the track a couple of times, isn't likely to surrender his position so easily to another driver. If he's had to do it the hard way, then I'm sure that he's going to make everybody else have it the same way.
What I would expect Goss to do here would be to try to time his exit from the causeway so that he's going faster than Carter, and try and catch him up on the run, the straight line run up to Polo. But at least draw level with him, as he's trying to do now. He may be able to assert his right to the corner, but Carter won't let him have it, and the procedure starts again.
No doubt after they've gone past the finishing line in Pitt Straight and then around over the Western Crossing into Hume Straight, we'll see a little bit of action between these two, with the 2 large engine cars, the Falcon GTHO of Murray Carter leading John Goss in the Ford GT at the moment, but for how long? Into Hume Straight, and we'll see the power of these two as they really give them full throttle on the largest straightaway at this Warwick Farm circuit, and Goss will no doubt try everything, but has he got the power to get past? Well, that was his best opportunity with that long straight, and here he is trying to force the Falcon off around the corner, and he's done it.
Very smooth piece of work from John Goss. He simply outbraked Murray Carter at the end of the straight. There was virtually nothing in it at top speed or acceleration to top speed, merely that Goss was able to brake harder at later and wheeled into the corner fully under control, and proceeds now to walk away from Murray Carter with great ease.
Now this is the third place car, Bob Morris in the Torana. He's been in that position for all but the first lap.
Dominated by Toranas, not for any reason other than at the moment for this category of racing they're by far the most suitable car in Australia.
Colin Bond firmly established in the lead in the Torana XU1 and would be leading by almost a minute now from John Goss in the Ford GT. This is Goss now. Coming up Hume Straight, a very long straightaway. Now braking sharply for this very tight bend at Creek Corner. See, he slowed right down, would perhaps cut his speed to almost a fifth of what he was going at top speed up the straight.
At least under these conditions, drivers of sedan cars have got some advantages over the drivers in the open wheel cars. In the Tasman race, where the spray which was launched into the air by the vast rear wheels of the Formula 5000 cars, in this case is restrained quite effectively by the mudguards of these production type cars. They've also got windscreen wipers to help them. Most of the drivers, I think, will finish the race fairly dry.
And he's got to complete this lap and then only one more to finish the race. Colin Bond jumping straight away from the start and hasn't been headed since. His only problem really has been in overtaking the cars that he's lapped. Bob Morris in the Torana XU1 in third place, and between those two Toranas, John Goss still holding down second place in that rather large Ford GT. So while Morris comes around Ledger Corner into pit straight, we'll have seen Colin Bond go through already, and Colin Bond now is on his way to his last lap of the race. Colin Bond a quarter of the way around the circuit now.
Bond now pointing his way into Ledger on the final lap, looking in total command as he has right from the fall of the flag, lapping yet another car as he heads towards the start-finish line. Over the way, you can see the water falling out from underneath the car. Obviously very wet indeed out there. And Bond, with very little time and distance remaining between him and the checkered flag, hurrying towards the finish of the race.
So up Hume Straight now for the last time, Colin Bond. And I think he'll be quite glad it's all over too, because although he's enclosed in the cabin of the car, it's not an open wheeler situation that he's getting that wet. It's certainly very tiring driving under such conditions with so much concentration involved and so much hard work as well. But even still on the last lap, he takes that corner at Creek Corner so easily as though it presents no hazard whatsoever, and I'm sure his speed going around that corner is faster than anyone else's in the race. Bond making his way now around towards the causeway. Come around between these two twin lakes that have really seen their volume of water increase with this heavy rain here today. Car number 14, the Torana XU1, driven by Colin Bond of Victoria. Less than half the circuit to go now. To the last corner of the race, or the last series of corners. Two gentle right-handers are now into Hume Straight, pit straight at least for the last time, to take the checkered flag, and Colin Bond of Victoria wins the production touring car race, the second round of the South Pacific Touring Car Series, and that's the margin of his victory. He's already taken the checkered flag and more than half a lap behind John Goss in the Ford GT, now coming on his way, quite untroubled to take second place, but so far behind the winner. Colin Bond of Victoria, the winner, in 38 minutes 19.1 seconds. 38 minutes 19.1 for the 72 kilometres. And across the causeway now in second place, John Goss. He'd almost have to fall into the lake there to lose second place. His margin in front of the third place car, that of Bob Morris, would be almost a minute itself, but he's been beaten by well over a minute, I would say, by Colin Bond. Colin Bond, the victor of the race, and John Goss now coming himself into this series of last two small right-handed bends. And into pit straight for the last time, and John Goss takes second place in the Ford GT with Bob Morris in car number 11, the Torana XU1, to take third place.